Have you ever noticed how painted images are all around us? That's where I come in. I'm a curator at an art gallery. I choose paintings for people to look at, and I'm on a mission to show you why looking is worth it, to show you why painting matters. It can challenge you, play with you, and even lift your soul. Come with me on this journey through art and you'll see the world through new eyes. Painted landscapes represent the world around us, but do they have the power to capture more than just how the scenery looks? Here in New Zealand, we all speak the language of landscape. Bush, mountains, beaches. But the landscape doesn't just live in parts of the country seen by tourists. It lives in each of us. A few years ago, I moved from Dunedin back to my hometown, Christchurch, and spent day after day driving around looking for somewhere to live. That's when I stumbled on this. A brand new suburb named after a famous English landscape painter, Thomas Gainsborough. So what's this master of hedgerows doing here? From property developers on their estates to artists in their studios, we can all agree on what makes a great traditional landscape view. And that's because we are all, consciously or not, soaking in hundreds of years of European landscape painting tradition. But what happens if the things that you care about in a place can't be contained inside those traditional frames? Here's the most famous slice of idealised landscape Gainsborough ever served up. It's Mr. and Mrs. Andrews on their Suffolk farm. But their little piece of paradise is built on some hard facts. Get caught without permission in those golden fields and you might get a bum full of buckshot. But what's Gainsborough got to do with the New Zealand landscape? Gainsborough is here because he suggests a certain blue-blooded lifestyle. But the thing is, Christchurch in the 21st century is not Suffolk in the middle of the 1700s. So I want to go and find some other ways of seeing the landscape today. But first, to find out how landscape painting evolved in New Zealand, I'm heading back to Dunedin, to the Hocken Library, and a landscape created around the same time as New Zealand as we know it. And just as the first settlers reshaped the land according to European ideals, so did the first painters. In John Gilfillan's Native Council of War, we have a front row seat at the invention of New Zealand, the invention of a certain kind of New Zealand painting. And the light we see here is not New Zealand light. It's not that sun-burning, UV-enriched light we all see when we go outside. It's the light of 18th century European landscape painting, a soft light that Gilfillan has projected onto this place. He's brought it to New Zealand in his imaginative baggage. But in the 20th century, local artists start flooding the landscape with fresh kinds of light. One of the gems of the Hocken's painting collection, this very early work by Tos Wollaston, a Nelson landscape. And I love this work because in it, for the first time, you feel a New Zealand artist taking the colour knob and cranking the volume up. By making the colours pop and the forms jostle, Wollaston's not trying to paint the landscape as it looks, but capture how it feels. Rita Angus made the landscape new by adding more than any surveyor could see. Otago seems to unfold endlessly, landscapes rising out of landscapes. Other times, she reduces the world to one detail that says it all. Rita Angus's tree might be expected to suffer from watercolour's reputation as a reclusive and bedridden kind of medium. And from this distance, her painting of a tiny tree on the brink of budding hardly hollers for our attention. But Angus was never a stronger or a larger artist than when she wielded this supposedly minor medium. And coming within a metre of this work is like being let in slowly on a very urgent secret. The date matters. 1943, war raging, the whole balance of the world under threat. And Angus paints her tree as if it's the last one on the planet. The doors to a stark new kind of landscape painting had been flung open. Enter Colin McCann. I painted this painting. I don't mean that I painted this painting exactly, I painted my copy of it. Fifth form art, Shirley Boys High School, acrylic paints, my own cack-handed copy. And in the big book of New Zealand landscape painting, this is one of the great beginning images. It's Takaka in the north of the South Island, but it might be a new world. McCann takes New Zealand back to the opening moments of the Old Testament, when God gives shape to heaven and earth. With that valley sweeping open and low hills rising, the landscape looks as if the heavenly hands have just finished their moulding and quietly withdrawn from the scene. It's a beginning landscape, stripped back to its bones, and above it all, light separating from dark. It strikes me that once you've seen a powerful painting of a landscape, that place is never the same again. It's suddenly charged with emotion and human story. The landscape in New Zealand art is like the real New Zealand landscape. It's a live and shifting thing. Under the surface of even the most polite views, there are charged stories, explosive incidents, heated histories and memories. And some of our best new landscape painters want to bring that energy to the surface. The landscape paintings we're also familiar with present green and leafy visions of the natural world. But what if the view doesn't encompass all you know or feel about a place? The best landscape artists today want to find the history that's hiding. Now, you'll find 1,000 variations on the great New Zealand view in second-hand shops, three-star motels, and backblocks cafes. But what's wrong with this picture? The fact that it's been done to death. And what's missing is the action, the mischief, the history and the mystery that make the New Zealand landscape an exciting place to be. Artist Tony Delatour trawls junk shops for landscapes brimming with fluffy foliage, babbling brooks, and picture book mountain peaks. And then he sets to work giving them a second life. Coaxing faces from clouds, opening pits in the ground, and smuggling in rogue characters like leering snakes and shaggy British lions. Is Tony vandalising the past or resuscitating it? Paradise is under attack and it looks like fun. Other artists are inspired by natural marvels that no longer exist. The pink and white terraces were once a favourite with painters, but when they were destroyed by an eruption in 1886, the view was lost forever. But Mary Rose Crook returns obsessively to the terraces, one of the many objects this 21st century artist seems to have rummaged from the closets of the 19th. Here they spill out from inside a garment woven with colonial New Zealand history, or nestle like live and fleshy things inside lavish folds of velvet. We don't have to go all the way back to the 19th century to find landscapes loaded with memory. There are fresher histories out there if you look hard enough. For almost 4 decades, Robin White has been looking at out-of-the-way places. One-horse townships like Mongaweka, or the shy suburban facades of Parramatta. Wherever she finds herself, Robin portrays the place with a tender eye for the way people make themselves at home. About 10 years ago, Robin found herself making a new home in Masterton in the Wairarapa. And when she got here, she saw something special in the landscape. All I see is a field with a pile of rubble and barbed wire that would send you running for a tetanus shot. But whatever Robin saw inspired something extraordinary. A landscape flowing across 12 painted paper scrolls. This is like travelling through an old sepia photograph where every shadow and object holds a secret. When Robin first moved here, she decided to get to know the place a little bit better, to find out what it's all about, what makes it special.
I started looking into the history of this valley, and I started going to the library and reading books, and asking questions of people that I met. That led me to Featherston and the site of the World War I training camp.
A training camp prepared local men to fight the war in Europe, a war that Robin's father fought in, and after living through the horrors, he came back a pacifist.
He joined the Peace Council in Auckland. One particular meeting he took me to and they showed a film, a very raw black and white footage of Hiroshima just hours after the bombing. It had a profound effect on me, but it also created an interest in Japan in me.
Then came Robin's second discovery. By World War II, the training ground had become a prisoner of war camp that held around 800 Japanese soldiers captured in the Pacific.
The prisoners, some of them used to like lying in the grass and watching the hawks. There's a lot of hawks in this valley, but there's also these objects that were made by the prisoners. A number of carvings featuring eagles. There's a wonderful, wonderful little book in English script, but Japanese words. They were trying to learn English and some of the guards were trying to learn Japanese. I understood this to mean that the culture that developed at the camp was actually a very supportive one for those Japanese.
In 1943, some of the prisoners protested against their forced labour and staged a strike. It was an act that led to tragedy. The guards opened fire, killing 48 men. Stories differ on what really happened, who charged whom, what led to the first shot being fired. A military inquiry later pardoned New Zealand and acknowledged that the language barrier between prisoners and guards contributed to the tragedy.
I had decided that I really wanted to include some element in the painting which spoke about a mismatch of cultural attitudes. And I felt that the best way to do that was to include Japanese characters.
Robin stumbled on a verse that one of the Japanese soldiers found while he was trying to learn English.
And he read this verse which really touched him somehow, and he wanted to find out where this verse came from. And he knew it came from the Bible. So he decided he would read the Bible. And several months later he found it. And it was in Isaiah chapter 40.
Even the youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles.
Thinking about the whole history of that area and reading that and then looking up and seeing that valley, that was the beginning of the painting.
Here's the barbed wire fence, the outbuildings, the scraggy silhouetted shelter belt behind, that verse from Isaiah. But there's something that seems so obvious to me now that I didn't see before. These scrolls, these pours of ink, are a New Zealand artist's homage to a visual tradition from another country, another time. When we say the word landscape, we think of something solid, layers of earth, layers of rock, geology. But what Robin proves in this painting is that landscapes are also made of layers of time and memory. And as the bird travels across the landscape, it seems to reconcile the differences between two traditions. This field looks different now. The barbed wire, the concrete where the barracks once stood, and the Japanese poem that gives Robin's painting its name. All that remains of the dreams of warriors, summer grass. Robin's painting has transformed this once empty landscape into a place humming with meaning. Landscapes don't have to portray just the pretty and predictable views. Today, artists paint what we don't first see, using their brushes to coax out hidden histories. But some go even further, taking us to mythical places or lifting off into spaces of the spirit. Christchurch is one flat landscape, and that's okay by me. But sometimes I want a little relief from the flatness. I want to get up a little higher, gain some perspective. And when I do, I climb up and away from the grid into the cliffs, the rocks, and the caves. Some of the earliest paintings made in New Zealand were landscapes. But this wasn't painting that framed and recorded the land at a distance. It was painting made on and of the landscape, under rocky overhangs and in caves. And this painting made on the land has fascinated and haunted contemporary artists, artists looking for some new way to evoke the connection between people and the spirit of a place. It fascinated the great New Zealand abstract painter Gordon Walters as a young man in the 1940s, opening his eyes to the power of pattern. It fascinated Tony Fomerson, who painted cliffs, caves and dark spaces that reverberate with ancestral presence. And in the last few years, these spaces inside the land have fascinated one of the most compelling painters of New Zealand landscapes, Bill Hammond. In Signal Box 5, we're inside looking out through the seeping atmosphere of a cave. All round, Bill's strange bird people ring bells, release smoke signals, and cover the walls with their own cave paintings. The port of Lyttelton, with its volcanic hills, and a place out there nicknamed Traffic Cop Bay, have inspired another of Bill's great birdland paintings. Sleek figures stand and wait. They suggest landscape spirits, but spirits of a solid and menacing kind. Some hold palm fronds, others weapons. Blood streams through the smoky atmosphere. It's Bill's vision of this place long before it was named, a vast harbour ruled by squadrons of birds and drenched in strange weather. I come away from Lyttelton with my eyes and mind full, and what I experience is that mysterious sharpening of vision. It's as if the world's focus knob has been freshly tweaked. I can't tell whether Bill has opened my eyes to something that was always there, or if I now see the landscape in the image of his painting. With great painting, we see more than just a record of what's there. It's as if mere space has become richly imagined place. And Bill isn't the only New Zealand artist lifting up and away from familiar ground. Across his career, Shane Cotton has painted the horizon many times, from the little hillscapes stacked in his sepia-toned works through to his night skies seething with words. But in his more recent paintings, he's begun a new journey into the space between land and sky. Every time I see Shane Cotton's Takarangi, it's a rush for me, and a rush in terms of sheer scale. It's a painting that's higher than I am, it's far wider than I am, and when you come close to this canyon wall, you swoop in suddenly on a journey that's already in motion. The painting feels like a trapdoor opened onto some kind of underworld where there's no telling up from down. But here's the thing, with a great painting, there's always more to see. You can always go deeper, you can always travel farther. Palmy, pretty flat, pretty familiar. But from here, Shane Cotton is turning the familiar on its head.
There's a huge amount of fun to be had because you can make it anything you want.
And he launches us right into a drama of change and creation.
One of the things I started doing when I created this body of work was read a myth, and I'd read a story, and I'd pick up on an aspect of it, and I'd think, well, that could be a starting point for bringing together a series of images.
One of Cotton's big inspirations has been the story of Taimai, the great bird made sacred by a Maori chief. A rival chief tried to capture it, and the bird escaped by melting into the rock where its spirit remained. But Shane shifts the myth into worlds that are harder to place.
So I started looking at rock formations from the Grand Canyon and skyscapes from different places around the world, and I was bringing together these different pieces of information and then trying to sort of make them fit into this narrative.
So these are composites of landscapes from all around the world.
The place of it's actually not really that important because I want it to be its own space in the painting.
I mean, if you think of landscape painting, it's the horizon that anchors us all the way through. And I think part of the shock of seeing these works for the first time was that sense of the horizon just suddenly dropping from view and you're out into open space.
What interests me about the kind of allusion to movement, or that sense of something just happened or about to happen, this idea that things are in sort of like a constant flux.
Takarangi's spiralling power derives from one bold and simple move. It tips the landscape tradition on its side, turning the horizon vertical, dealing a blow to our normal sense of stability in a painted landscape. Look closely, and near the centre of the solid rock there's a strange agitation in the paint, an unusual smearing and slipping of the cliff face. A bird is breaking free of the rock in a flurry of white brush marks. Other birds fly nearby. Perhaps they're the same birds seen at different times. Or are they different birds also caught in this spiritual vortex? And while the birds struggle to fly past or break free of the cliff face, out at the edge the rock morphs into a huge face or skull, its dark eyes and heavy brow hacked from the cliff like a spirit guardian. While there's no saying exactly what this form is, Shane leaves us in no doubt that it's sacred.
I wanted to create works that were very open-ended, works that weren't necessarily about particular places, works that challenged the viewer in terms of their naturalism, so that you had these images that were brought together that were from different spaces, but they somehow kind of operated on the same plane.
Leap into landscape painting and you'll be surprised where you find yourself. You may be travelling back into the picturesque past, along with unlikely companions, discovering the rich seams of memory that lie in the ground, or swooping upward into deep spaces. The thing about landscape is, it's bigger than all of us. No one painting can hope to encompass everything that's out there. What painting can offer is a series of hints or thoughts or speculations about how to turn space into place, how to make yourself at home. The New Zealand landscape is an idea, it's an invention, it's an emotional map that keeps being redrawn. And place, in the richest sense, encompasses this solid landscape of stone and earth and the inner landscape of the imagination.